Good morning, everyone. My name is Council President, and I'm so glad to be here with you all. We're going to, people scoot in a little bit more. Thank you all for coming out. Such a great turnout. Everyone give yourselves a round of applause for the beautiful day, beautiful turnout. Amen. So although it is a pleasure to stand here with so many people from around the city, the state, it brings absolutely no joy in the occasion which brings us together this morning. Gun violence continues to take a toll on our families, our communities, in our city, and our nation. Gun violence kills roughly 96 Americans a day. The leading cause of death among African American men between the age of 15 and 34 is homicide with a firearm. So we stand here today in solidarity with cities all across this country in recognition of June as Gun Violence Awareness Month and today as National June Gun Violence Awareness Day. Today we pause to honor the victims, the families, and all who have lost their lives and been affected by gun violence in this country. But today, as we recognize the national need for gun reform and gun violence, I want to pause and shed light on what's happening right here in the city of Detroit. Far too often, we see the headlines of young men and young women losing their life to senseless gun violence in our city. I don't know about you all, but I'm tired of going to prayer vigils for our young women and men losing their lives right here in the city of Detroit. And so today, again, I want to shine a bright light of peace, of hope, of love right here in my hometown, our city, the city of Detroit. Let us remember today and honor those who have lost their life, who have been injured to gun violence. I want to uplift the families and the friends that have suffered and are dealing with broken families, post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, those that are suffering through uncontrollable grief and pain. We recognize you on today. But today, as I close, is not just us gathering here today. I want all of us to leave with a question and a challenge for all of us. We all have to do our collective part in ending gun violence in this country. And so I encourage each and every one of you to find your own voice, use your circle of influence to stand up and be the change that we want in this country and in this city. Together, amen. Together we can collectively take back our communities, child by child, family by family, neighborhood by neighborhood, and block by block. So I challenge again all of you all to find your voice. What more can you do in your own home? What can you do in your own neighborhood? What can you do in your community? Our young people are in need of love, mentorship, educational opportunities, and how to resolve conflict without resorting to violence. And lastly, we cannot address the issue of gun violence without dealing with the root cause of what actually breeds gun violence in our communities. And so we have to go beyond marches and rallies and visuals, but actually take our works to the streets and the neighborhoods of our communities. We must address the underlying social issues that breed crime throughout this country. And so I thank you all for gathering here with us today. I'm going to now turn it over to Reverend Berry, who has been a constant voice in the issue of gun violence in the city. Reverend Berry, if you can come up, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Council President Pro Tem, for that wonderful introduction. Y'all got to excuse me. I did all that chanting going around the corner as we did the march. Now I kind of lost my voice, so just bear with me for just a second. But let's take a moment of silence to honor all of those innocent victims of gun violence. Let's just take a moment of silence. And let me take a moment and also do a prayer. The Lord be with you. Heavenly Father, we first come thanking you for this day. Your word says, this is the day that the Lord has made. We will rejoice and be glad in it. Heavenly Father, even though we come here on a very somber occasion, we come together in unity. We come together in love. We come together with mothers and fathers and sisters and brothers. We come here as children and as parents and friends, honoring those who have lost their lives because of gun violence. We thank you, Heavenly Father, for the collective unit that have gathered here. Your word says one can put 1,000 in a flight, two can put 10,000. There's hundreds of us gathered here. We are putting the billions in the flight. We're standing up for everybody who needs somebody to stand with them. So we stand united together in love and in peace and in unity. And Heavenly Father, we know when the people of God stand up, stupid sits down, gun violence sits down, poverty sits down, illiteracy sits down. But we have got to get up off our asset and be an asset to our community, an asset to our neighborhood, an asset to our family. So we all stand as a major asset collectively together to say that we're standing against gun violence in the United States and all over the world, and especially in the city of Detroit. So we stand in unity, in peace, and in love. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen.
Amen.
And let me say really quickly, as President Pro Tem had mentioned about we got to get to the root causes. Church of the Messiah, we get to the root causes. We gather with people from all over. We do affordable housing. We have an employment office. We're the internet provider. We create jobs for young people. Our congregation is mixed race, but 60% of our congregation is African-American male under the age of 30. We stand up for the people who have no voice. Join us on the 29th of June, 29th, 2 weeks from today. I think it's 2 weeks from today. We're going to stand up at Church of the Messiah. We're going to gather with people from all over the country. This is not just something that affects Detroit. It affects our entire nation. We're going to gather with organizations from Los Angeles, Chicago, New York, D.C., Boston. They're going to come to Detroit to see how we do it, to see how we are united, to see how we stand up for our community and neighborhoods. We're going to meet at Church of the Messiah, which is located at 231 East Grand Boulevard on the corner of Lafayette at 10 a.m. We're going to take it to the street, but we're going to take it to the neighborhood. Yes. We're going to take it into the schools. We're going to take it into the police department. We're going to take it into governmental offices. We're going to take it into our households, and we're going to say enough is enough. Yes. We are the people of good, the people of conscience, the people of love, and we're going to stand up against violence. And I want to end with this. This past Monday, I just buried a 17-year-old student from Martin Luther King High School who was killed in a drive-by. He was not the intended target, but he was working to make the neighborhood a safe place to be. And he was working to rebuild our employment office. So tomorrow we're going to dedicate our employment office, which was going to be called Church of the Messiah Empowerment Center, is going to be the DeMarcus Washington Empowerment Center in honor of the 17-year-old young man who was working on that. I invite you all to join us at 12 o'clock tomorrow, Church of the Messiah.
All right, Reverend Barry. Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Now we have with us the one and only U.S. Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib. Yes.
Thank you so much, Speaker Pro Tem Mary Sheffield. Thank you so much for your leadership. From day one, she has always, I think you did the whole program in the corner. It was amazing. Thank you so much for standing up against gun violence throughout our city. Good afternoon. As you all know, we are here today to support and in solidarity with the survivors of gun violence that are here today. Thank you so much for your courage to continue to fight. Thank you so much for being here with us today. As you all know, we're wearing orange today to honor the memory of those who have lost their lives, and we honor those whose lives have been completely, irreparably damaged and hurt by gun violence. We honor you today, families. Please give them a round of applause. We all know, because we're the choir, but we all know that more and more people are killed by gun violence in the United States. According to the latest statistics, gun violence-related deaths were at all-time high in 2017, nearly 40,000 lives lost. Michigan accounted for 1,100 of those deaths. Our children should feel safe in their schools. We should feel safe in our homes of worship. As a parent, it breaks my heart to hear about lockdown drills. Gun violence seems to have become a new normal for our country. I say to all of us here today, it's not normal that our children have to learn about gun violence in kindergarten, first grade, second grade. And we all know it doesn't have to be this way. During this week, as we bring awareness to gun violence with events all across the country, we must acknowledge that it is time to make a change. Safe storage laws, trigger lock requirements, assault weapon bans lead to fewer gun-related deaths. I am supporting these laws unwaveringly, and I will deter by supporting and standing up against the massive special interest groups that try to dilute our voice. I have co-sponsored these bills and stand strong with them. Among them are Assault Weapons Ban of 2019. It's a bipartisan Background Checks Act. Most recently, and this is something incredible to be serving with Congresswoman Lucy Macbeth, who pushed for, and she is the only person within the chamber that has lost her only child to gun violence, and to be serving with her with that kind of lens, with that kind of knowledge, personal knowledge, is something that brings a lot of passion on this issue. And I am very, very, very proud to have supported Congresswoman Lucy Macbeth's Federal Extreme Risk Protection Order Act of 2019 that would prevent people who pose a threat to themselves and others from accessing firearms. You all know already, there's a wave of incredible women. And yes, there are men, but incredible women that are advocating for common sense gun reform in our country. But we should also be uplifting the young people who have, out of unfortunate tragedy, taken up leadership on this action to push this country towards saving lives. I look at those young folks, like those in the March Our Lives, the young people who have had to endure tragedy that would break any of us to our core. Those young people are all throughout Washington, D.C. in the halls of Congress, fighting on our behalf. Change happens out here in the streets, the grassroots way. And I'm so proud to show you that it isn't the bills that we introduce, it's because of what happened in the movement outside of the halls, outside of the White House. That's how change happens. And this is what happened with March Our Lives and those that have been standing up against gun violence, like Moms Demand Action. And you all are the reason that we now have the courage among a lot of members of Congress now that are fighting for change. We cannot stop until mass shootings are no longer common in our country. We cannot stop until the fear of going to our workplace, school, churches, synagogues, masjids are erased. We cannot stop, and I will be right here with you, walking hand in hand until we finally do something about gun violence in our country. Thank you so much. Keep fighting.
All right, we're gonna leave fired up. All right, our next speaker is Michigan representative from the 29th District, Brenda Carter, who was actually a survivor as well. Is she here today? All right.
Yes, survivor. Can I lower that down? I'm short. Yes. Thank you, Council Pro Tem Sheffield. This is very personal to me, okay? In 2007, July 28th, I got a call from my sister Carolyn. She told me, Randy is dead. That's her oldest son. Randy is dead. Randy was walking to the store in Grand Rapids. He just happened to be in the right place at the wrong time. The devastation that caused to our family is with us today. The pain, the hurt of a random act of violence. In 2017, while on the campaign trail, I got a call. It was 10 years and 2 days since my nephew Randy got killed. The call was, Brenda, your son got shot. Praise God, my son survived. Our son survived. But he survived crippled. He can't work. He has 3 children. And he happened to be in the wrong place at the right time. We must put an end to gun violence.
Yes, say it, say it, say it. Speak from your heart, yes, yes.
The pain does not go away, whether you bury them or whether you watch them depreciate into nothing because they can't put food on the table for their families. I stand with Representative Robert Wittenberg, which you will hear from in a minute. I'm part of the Gun Violence Prevention Caucus for the state of Michigan. And I'm going to do everything I can within my power, walk, march, stand, whatever, to ensure that no family ever feels what I feel today. So I applaud Mom's Demand Action. I applaud Rashida Tlaib, our Congresswoman. I applaud everybody that's out here who is standing in solidarity to put an end to gun violence. Thank you.
All right. Is U.S. Representative Haley Stevens here? Okay. Mothers of Murdered Children, Kira Motley. All right. Come on up. Give it up.
Good morning or good afternoon. My name is Kara Motley. I'm with the organization Mothers of Murdered Children, but I don't consider us an organization because we are mothers of a murdered child. My son was Trenton Motley. He died August 20th, 2015, going to retrieve his mail out of a mailbox in his apartment, and there were some gunmen in there. I stand before you. I'm okay. I healed. 3 years it took me to date to process my grief and to deal with my mourning and come to an acceptance that there is life after death. And I stand here to fight. In the words of Elliot Ness, I won't stop fighting till the fight is won. Yeah. And I stand before you to propose a question, because I processed the grief, I processed the anguish and everything else, but what I can't progress is, how did my son get murdered by a teenage boy with a military-grade AK-47 gun? And the majority of the members of Mothers of Murdered Children were murdered by military-grade weapons in the hands of other teenagers. And in the way I applaud the movie When They See Us, but I'm putting another question out there to everyone, especially our African-American community and culture. When will we see us? And know that we are not to want to put gun violence amongst each other. Because when we see us, then they will see us. So I'm putting there a question out there today. When will we see us? And I'm thankful. I work with Agogi Men's Foundation. They help mentor and renew mindsets of young men out here to do better and give alternative mindsets and family and responsibility of what it really is to be a young black African-American man in America. And I thank God for the Nation of Islam, for the NEA, all the people that's out here in the streets, in the community, like Rev. Sheffield said, you know, we have to get out here. Enough of the rallying and all that. Let's hit the streets. Let's be accountable. You know, let's be accountable. Kudos to the police and all the ones that stepped up and found the serial killer out here. We have to get out in the streets and protect our streets. We shouldn't have to wait for something to happen to want to go board up the houses and want to go do things after the fact. Prevention is better than cure in all ways, especially when the effects of gun violence is killing our people. And again, I'll say my name is Karen Miley. I'm with Mothers and Mother Children. And again, when they see us, when we see us, then they'll see us. Thank you.
All right. Let's bring up our Michigan representative, Robert Wittenberg. Come on up, Rep. All right. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, I think it's still morning. Good morning, everybody. If I can get this here. I appreciate you all having me here today. My name is Robert Wittenberg. I'm the state representative in the 27th House District in Oakland County. I'm also the founder and chair of our Legislative Gun Violence Prevention Caucus here in the state of Michigan. And I can tell you, as I stand here, it really is amazing to see so many people here today. When we started this group back in 2015, I, as a Democrat, was called crazy by not only my Republican colleagues in the House, but some of my Democratic colleagues as well. And it's unfortunate that it's taken so much violence, so many mass shootings and gun deaths for people to start to come around in the legislature. But I want to recognize some of our colleagues that are here today that are fighting alongside of us. Representative Brenda Carter, who was here, she's amazing. First-term rep, and she is a force to be reckoned with in the legislature, that's for sure. Representative Lori Pahutsky, who's over here. Matt Kolazar. We had Joe Tate, but I don't know if Joe left already. But Joe Tate as well. And then it'd be tough to try to recognize all different elected officials, but I just want to recognize the fact that if an elected official is here, we have to give them credit for standing up, being seen, taking part of this. I know Dave Woodward, who is the chair of the Oakland County Commission, is over here as well. Are there any other elected officials? Please raise your hand if you're an elected official around the state. Okay, but make sure, I know a lot of communities pass resolutions, recognizing what we're trying to do here today and every single day. So make sure you thank those elected officials who are out there making their voices heard. With some of my colleagues, this week I introduced House Resolution 121 to recognize June 7th as Gun Violence Awareness Day here in Michigan. With over 30 co-sponsors for the resolution. Now, this resolution renews our commitment to ending gun violence here in Michigan, and it's no secret that our country is in crisis. We're all living in fear and the terror of gun violence that it creates in our communities. From shootings in our neighborhoods, our schools, our workplaces, to tragedies in our places of worship. Sometimes it feels as though we are helpless to these heinous acts. And while so many of our loved ones, our friends, our neighbors, fall victim to gun violence year after year, and I won't go into all the statistics, I know everyone else has mentioned that, but it's easy to think that gun violence is unavoidable. But while my heart is heavy as I recall the horrific shootings that have taken place across our country, I'm still full of hope that those who lost their lives will have not died in vain. I continue to be inspired by survivors of gun violence who have stood up to demand that these tragedies never happen again. Whether it was the brave survivors of Parkland who inspired millions with their call to action, and I see a lot of our students here today, or any of our students from Students Demand Action here today, please raise your hand. And give them a round of applause. I can tell you this. They have changed the discussion, not only here in Michigan, but around our country. These are not only our future leaders, these are our leaders today. We're also here, and we're inspired by the friends of Hadia Pendleton, who wore orange, and why we wear orange in her honor after she was tragically shot and killed Shortly after she was part of President Obama's second inauguration. Their example is why we are here today, to honor those lives stolen by gun violence. They inspire me to believe that our communities will one day be free from gun violence. We all deserve the freedom to live safely in our homes, to learn at our schools, and pray at our houses of worship without the fear of gun violence. I know we mentioned these schools are now doing lockdown drills and Alice training. I will never be resigned to the fact that this is the norm. We need to do more. But we can't just hope that things will change. We must do something. Insanity is continually doing nothing and hoping that everything will change. You can't just offer thoughts and prayers after a shooting. And I today am honored to stand here to reinforce our commitment at the state level to end this cycle of gun violence. We have introduced many pieces of legislation, but not even one has received a hearing. And that's simply wrong. I know we mentioned some of the legislation, even at the federal level, extreme risk protection order. I'm proud to say that I've been the lead sponsor for extreme risk protection order or red flag laws here in Michigan, all 3 of my terms. If somebody is a threat to themselves or somebody else, we need a mechanism, we need some recourse to be able to temporarily seize their weapons. And currently we cannot do that. This needs to be passed. We've also talked about universal criminal background checks we've been working on, safe storage laws, the list goes on and on. We need to put the value of our children's lives over the profits of gun manufacturers. We should love our children more than we love our guns. And I say this a lot, but it's easier to child-proof our weapons than to bulletproof our children. So when the priorities of our leaders change and our laws change, that's when things here in Michigan and across the country will start to change. But if our leaders won't change their priorities, that's when we change our leaders. I can say that again. If the leaders won't change their priorities, that's when we change our leaders. And I know, just a quick plug, with Moms Demand Action, they do have a gun sense candidate score. They do scorecards and endorse candidates who are gun sense candidates. So make sure you are aware next time there's an election and find out if the person you're planning to vote for gets that designation. Our movement grows stronger each day, and I'm hopeful that together we will end these senseless killings. Because across our country, people like you are banding together to stop gun violence, one community at a time. I want to thank you all again for your passion and commitment to ending gun violence here in Michigan and across the country. I stand in solidarity with you, and I will fight with you every single day to mitigate gun violence and end gun violence here in Michigan and across the country. Thank you all so much for being here today.
U.S. Representative from the 11th District, Haley Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Wittenberg. Thank you to Moms Demand Action. Thank you to our Students for Action. Thank you to Moms for Our Life. I'm Congresswoman Haley Stevens. I represent Michigan's 11th District. This was a seat that we flipped. And we flipped it. We flipped it because we said enough. We said that we are going to stand up to the gun lobby and we are going to stand up for our people and their safety. And that is the message we heard loud and clear. I was not shy in my commitment to all of you. And I said on day one, we are sending a letter to every single member of Congress when I join that body saying, join me in passing common sense gun safety legislation. And we have been at work. This bright, bold, we're not shy freshman class, asking everybody to join us in this fight. And I want to make a point about all of you who are here today and carrying the torch and doing the work and engaging your neighbors, our state electeds, our other federal representatives who are here. We are doing this work because we are together. And I'll tell you, I'm agitated. I'm a little frustrated. And I'm not giving up because we passed the universal background checks bill in the House. We passed the loophole bill in the House. But what are we doing? We're waiting for the Senate. And so part of what we are all doing here today is we are staying agitated. We are continuing to ask because the fight isn't over. Call the Senate. We know Gary Peters. We know Debbie Stabenow. They are with us. We have got to call their colleagues. I talk about this in our region. Whether you live in 11th district or not, my vote is a national vote. I am voting for all of you. I am voting for our safety. I am voting to make change. And you better believe our Senate cannot sit there and not take up this bill. 98% of Americans want universal background checks. They want safety for our communities. People are saying, why are we having these active shooter drills and traumatizing our students? This is not the comfortable status quo. This is not the price of American freedom. The price of American freedom is making change and saying that gun violence in any zip code in America is not right and how we want to live our lives. So I walk with my colleagues, I walk with all of you, I race to get down here today on this beautiful day, and we are wearing orange because we are going to end gun violence in America. We know this is not who we are as a nation that, frankly, doesn't feel safe in our schools, doesn't feel safe in our places of worship. These are uncomfortable conversations, and we owe it to our students. We owe it to you for compelling us to do better. And frankly, I wouldn't be standing here today in a congressional district that hasn't had someone willing to stand up to the gun lobby in over 50 years. That's what we accomplished. The 9th largest voter turnout out of 435 congressional seats in the country. Now, I had the 4th largest youth voter turnout, too, because we asked for it, and we're going to continue to ask for it, and we're not being shy. Enough is enough is enough. No more. This month is every month. This month to end gun violence is, I've got it right on my office door, the letter that I sent to my colleagues. And the thing is, your congresswoman is continuing to legislate. Just because we pass the bills, I am not afraid to get uncomfortable and say to my colleagues, no matter how sweet they seem or how dedicated they seem, why didn't you vote for that universal background check? Knock, knock, Mitch McConnell. Why haven't you taken up the bill yet? Because we are waiting for it. We are here in the great Motor City. We are waiting for it. The time is now. So thank you all from the bottom of my heart. Thank you to everyone for walking today. We walk today, we walk tomorrow after that, and we won't stop until the job is done. We're orange. Thank you. Thank you all.
You're beautiful. I love this. Yes. She has us fired up. All right. We now have Dr. Jerry Walden. He's the Physicians for Prevention of Gun Violence.
There we are. Well, you know, I'm not going to light you up like that, I don't think, but we're just docs, you know, we're kind of slow and easy, and yeah, exactly. So our Michigan mission is that we are educated and empowered to advocate for gun violence prevention. And so we have a 700-member group now in Michigan, and it started out, you know, well, first of all, let me make a confession. You know, sometimes when I hit the couch at night and turn the TV on, is this too loud? Okay. When I do that, I select a movie, and what's it got in it? Well, it's got gun violence in it. This is so pervasive in our culture. If you turn off every film that you've ever seen with a gun in it, you're going to be turning off a lot of our culture. So I think one of the take-homes is that we have to start changing the culture. And we have to do it. Thank you. And so I'm just hooking on to what the representative said. She's doing it in Washington. We have to do it here in Michigan. And, you know, just like the Marlboro Man used to be the guy that we were looking at as the hero when I grew up. And then eventually when we realized that we were poisoning ourselves with cigarettes and people were dying, you know, 500,000 deaths a year due to cigarettes, we started to change that culture, and that man doesn't ride that horse like he did before. So we have to look at the way guns are so much a part of our culture. So just a couple things about me. You know, I was a family practitioner, and I had two incidents. One was a Hadia Pendleton kind of person. Tamara Stewart was at the wrong place at the wrong time at a party, picnic, and 16-year-old. And, you know, we just, nothing that our law enforcement or our laws does anything after you're dead. I mean, you can't start to do much to put people back together, except maybe to welcome them into this movement when they're ready, if they can be ready. And they're so powerful, and you all here who are survivors, and you kids who have realized that you've got to have a stake in this, you are really inspiring us. But so that was Tamara, and one of my best former patients. We call each other brothers because we've been so tight for 15 years. He's been in prison for 35 years for a crime that his girlfriend committed. And they both got life without parole. And Rick is living the life that nobody should have to live. I've been a prison doc, and I've been a physician, a medical expert for prisoners. You don't want to be in prison. This is terrible. And as the representative said, whose son got shot and survived, there are so many people with gunshot wounds in prison, in wheelchairs and other ways that life is even less tenable than it is when you're healthy like Rick. But Rick is my man. He's trying to get out, and he's a beautiful guy. And so, but that wasn't enough for me. So I've been sitting around in 2007, and Virginia Tech happens, and another doc and I was drinking coffee, and we said, well, we should do something. Where's the physician voice? Well, there wasn't one. So we should make one. Let's go to the mayor and have him join Mayors Against Illegal Guns, the parent of your mom's, or co-parent, I guess. And our mayor in Ann Arbor said, no, we don't have enough gun violence. I'm not going to do that. So we packed up and we went home. We didn't know what to do. And then when Gabby Giffords got shot in 2011, I said, oh, okay. I was trying to say, God, you know, I didn't really want to take this on. It's not going to be pleasant. I know the NRA is powerful, but you know, I had to do something. So I went to my physicians group and I said, you know, we got to form a group. We got to have some voice. And half of them joined, and then another group, half of them joined. And pretty soon we had 100, and now we're at 700. And we do go. Thank you. So we're working too. We go to Lansing. We're just in the state. We got, you know, we've got. Do you know that we've got a shoot? I'm saying, I want to say shoot to kill. We've got a no fault gun law here in the state that allows you to a free pass if you're shooting somebody out on the streets. You don't no longer have to run away. I'm blocking on the what's thank you, Representative. We have a stand your ground here in this state. Unbelievable. With 1,100 murders and killings, mostly they are coming from suicides. So we have to work really hard on our depressed youth. We have to give them something to live for, and we've alluded to all that thing. We have to look straight in the eye at our racism if we're white, and our privilege if we're white, and start to say what we need to uphold all our brothers, all our sisters, and so I'm blessed to be here. I thank you for your time. If you know a doctor who wants to join us, it's ppgv.org, Physicians for the Prevention of Gun Violence. Thank you.
All right. Bishop Darrell Harris from Ceasefire.
I want to start out today by, first of all, I've heard a whole lot about how one of the things we need to do is get on the ground and actually get out there and start touching lives. And I want to recognize my first 60 seconds. I want to recognize organizations that are out here on the ground that you may never hear of because they don't do this work because cameras are in their faces, and they don't do this work because they're getting a whole lot of money to do it. They do it because they love this city and they love people. Can I get a shout out on that? So I want to name Ceasefire Organization right here. Quincy Smith and my team right here. Lindsay Warren with Students Demand Action, right? Something we got to talk about. He's probably not present today, but Ray Winans and the D-Live program in our hospitals, right? Got to talk about that. We've got to talk about Andrea Clark. We got to talk about that. We've got to talk about people who are out here. Pastor Barry, who spoke earlier, Church of the Messiah. There are so many folk that are out here, and we're on the streets. I'm not talking about, going where the cameras are. We're on the streets. We're literally walking with persons and trying to influence them to let them know that there is a better way to live than what we have been living. Now, let me share something with you. Out of that 40,000 number that was given about gun deaths that happened in 2017, it was mentioned that 1,100 of those, Michigan as a state was responsible for. Here's another number that's going to blow your mind. 717 of those deaths, shooting deaths, happened in the city of Detroit. One city was responsible for over 50% of the 1,100 deaths, gun-toting deaths that happened in 2017. That is unheard of. We have lost less with soldiers who went off to the Gulf War. How is it possible for us to not think that there is a problem that is happening in our inner cities? And let me tell you something else that probably will blow your mind. This is not a problem that is a black problem. It's not a problem that's a white problem. It's not a problem that permeates any skin color, any skin tone, or any gender. I'm here to tell you it doesn't even permeate or is not even blocked out because of your occupation. We just mourned the death of a good friend. I didn't call her an officer. She was a good friend. Sergeant Elaine Williams, who was a good friend of ours, was herself, even as an officer, taken away from us because of gun violence. And not only that, but I'm standing here to tell you that even though I fight every day against this, I've also been touched by gun violence. My daughter, who's here from college, asked me, was I going to prepare a speech? And I said, I don't need to prepare a speech. I live this every single day. Every single day. Whether you're talking about me holding my own baby brother in my hands while I watched him bleed to death because somebody thought that it would be a good idea to put a gun to his hand, spin the handle, to spin it and put it to his head and pull the trigger, trying to play Russian roulette because he didn't want to play. Or maybe we want to talk about how my wife was held in her home for over 3 hours at gunpoint and brutally raped. Or perhaps we want to talk about how I myself was held up for 30 minutes while an AK-47 was put in my face because men just wanted the keys to my car and slapped me around after that. Some people might say, why would you even think to do this? And I'll tell you why. Because many of you out here will agree with this sentiment. I refuse any longer to be a victim of fear. I refuse to stand back and let someone else, just because they have a gun, make a decision that I am going to stop my own life. And I want to give it up not to every survivor. You aren't just survivors, you are overcomers. I want to give it up to you because it takes a lot of strength to do this. We're not here challenging somebody's gun rights. We're here because since 1787, the Constitution has been ratified 27 times. I don't think it's stupid to ask that they do it just one more time in the name of gun violence. Can I get a shout out right there? So I want you in my last minute, I want you to join me as we let Mitch O'Connell and anybody else that needs to know, we are not going away. We will not go away silently in the night. We will not put our mouths down. We will continue in this fight until everyone has the honor of living life without violence. Can I get somebody to say, no more violence? No more killing. No more shooting. Enough is enough. Now make some noise, everybody.
All right. Now we have with us Rosemary Bayer, our 12th Senate District survivor.
Thank you. Thank you. My name is Rosemary Bayer. I am the Michigan State Senate. Sorry. Thank you. I'm the senator from Michigan's District 12, which is in Oakland County. And I came here today to tell my own survivor story. So when I was a teenager, like so many kids now across this country, I suddenly had to grow up all at once. Try to understand a horrible, preventable tragedy in my life. This was a normal day in the small town that I grew up in. You get up, you go to school, you go to practice, you come home, and then the world just stopped. My friend, the boy next door, committed suicide with a gun. There is simply no way to prepare for this kind of thing happening. It was devastating to me, to his family, to our school, to our community. None of us will ever forget. We'll never stop feeling the pain of that day. I wondered, was there something I should have done or said or seen? As far as we could tell, it was a spur of the moment decision and action. If only he had not had access to a gun. 90% of suicide attempts with a gun succeed and result in death. On the other hand, 90% of suicide attempts by any other means do not result in death. In Oakland County, suicide is the second largest cause of death for our young people between ages 10 and 24. Access to a gun triples success in death by suicide. And across this whole country, 2/3 of firearm deaths are suicide. The whole country, 2/3 of death by firearm are suicide. We must protect our young people, our veterans, people who need help, not easy access to a lethal weapon, where just one bad moment can end up in a horrible but preventable tragedy. When something like this happens to you, you never forget, you never stop wondering, was there something I could do to keep this from happening? Well, I'm here now to say, yes, there is something we can do to prevent this from happening. We simply have to stop this easy access to firearms. As your legislator, I will never stop fighting to change the laws in Michigan to fix this. Stop this easy access to guns. Stop this major cause of suicide. And you all keep doing your part. Shine a light. Shine a big spotlight on this most necessary, most right thing to do to end gun violence, to keep our communities safe, take care of our families and our kids. I thank you so much for being here and doing this. Together, we can stop this. We can fix this. Thank you very much.
All right. Is there anyone up here that was supposed to speak that I'm missing? Were there any young people here that were supposed to speak? How many of? What's your name? Okay, yep. All right, so we have some of the students who want to come up. Come on, you guys can share because I don't have all your names.
Hi, my name's Megan. We're with DAM, Detroit Activist Youth Uniting Michigan. Thank you. So I just want to start off by talking about Parkland just for a second. So after Parkland, especially from youth, there was a surge to address gun violence and how gun culture impacted the safety of schools. This is evident, obviously, from the frequent school walkouts and the increase in rallies and protests, such as this one today. Representatives and community leaders were then forced to answer the question, how will you make our schools and communities safer? In response, some not-so-stellar solutions were provided. Arming educators with firearms was one of those solutions. To dissect such a proposal, it becomes imperative to ask, when did schools become a hunting ground? When did it become the teacher's responsibility to ready, aim, and fire? The sole priority of educators should be to cultivate a love for learning from their students and to watch them prosper academically. When was it deemed appropriate for the classroom authority figure to be given the responsibility to be judge, jury, and executioner? If we are to care about the future of American society, it is imperative to dissect such negligent solutions. As previously stated, schools are meant to provide students with the tools necessary to flourish. Yet schools have been bombarded with police presence. Study after study has shown that increased police presence has disproportionately hurt disabled, queer, and most notably, people of color. In order to begin to understand this dynamic, it must be recognized who and what peoples have the police historically protected. Who do the police continue to protect, and who do they make feel safer? The answer to these questions explain the academic and psychological toll armed security can impose upon students. If a solution impairs the lives of those the solution is meant to protect, how successful is that provision? When debating amongst friends, listening to representatives, or understanding community leaders, it must be asked, do these solutions help all Americans, or do they disproportionately benefit white America?
Hi, my name's Lydia. I'm also with DAM. Only a month ago, on May 18th, Malaysia Booker, a 23-year-old black transgender woman, was found dead after being fatally shot. Before that, in October, Brittany White was also killed, and before them, many others. They are not the first transgender women to be killed, and if things don't begin to change, they will not be the last. From 2008 to 2018, 2,998 transgender people were killed in the U.S. 1,145 of those deaths were from gunshots. But these are not just numbers or statistics. They were people, just like us, with ambitions and aspirations, who laughed and cried and loved, and then they were murdered. 38% of these deaths could have been prevented with stricter gun laws. 1,145 lives saved. From a young age, we are read the words of the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Yet marginalized groups, such as queer people and people of color, continue to live in fear every day, wondering if the next number, the next statistic, might be one of us.
All right, hi everyone, I'm Mia Moberly. I'm also with DAM. In a country literally ruled by white men, it is always the case that women and minorities are drowned out and pushed to the side. White supremacists and misogynists, people filled with hate, are often seen advocating for open carry laws. So tell me, why do we use the Constitution, a document written centuries ago and literally made to be changed, to justify arming these terrible people? It's their right to own a gun is something I see in Facebook comments and even in real life from white boys who don't know a single ounce of what women and people of color go through and the fear these communities face every single day. Was it their right to shoot and kill Malaysia Booker? Was it their right to shoot up the black church in Charleston? No. Tell me, was it their right to attack a yoga studio in Tallahassee as a part of the incel movement? No. My friends and I shouldn't have to worry about walking somewhere at night, not knowing if we will be okay or if we might be held at gunpoint and raped, which happens to be the fate of so many women and non-binary folks in America. We walk even in broad daylight with 911 dialed and ready to call, and with our keys between our fingers like Wolverine. We have dealt with the crushing reality of toxic masculinity every single day since before we even hit puberty, and to have that hatred armed with guns is an abominable thought. To those of you who say that arming citizens is a way of stopping gun violence, that is literally a contradiction in itself. If there are more guns, there will be more gun violence, and that is the simple truth. It is a sad picture in our country today. The fact that politicians and police chiefs would be so lazy as to tell us to buy guns and protect ourselves, when in fact all they have to do is pass simple legislation to protect us. It's in your job description, so do your job. We are not soldiers, and we should not be held to that standard. We are civilians.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Brooke Solomon, and I'm a student. And I am a student at Cass Technical High School here in the city of Detroit. I am here today to tell you that for too long, Black and brown communities have been silenced on the issue of gun violence, even though our communities have suffered the worst for the longest. If we are going to address the issue of gun violence and lobby for tougher gun control legislation, we must not forget that this issue is also about kids like me, Black kids from inner city neighborhoods who are constantly subjected to poverty, violence, low expectation, and a society built against them. We must not forget that police violence is gun violence, and that Black and brown kids are constantly exposed to over-policing and police brutality in schools and in their own neighborhoods. I see it in my own school, where every day Detroit police officers with bulletproof vests and pistols walk up and down the hallways, and they care more about control than safety. When we have conversations about gun violence, we must not forget those most disproportionately affected by it: people of color, women, poor people, and the LGBTQ community. I have come today to tell you what Audre Lorde has already warned you: your silence will not protect you. I've come today as the voice left out of a conversation dominated by white moderates. I come today as a woman, as a Black woman, as a queer Black woman, and as an anti-gun violence activist doing my work. I am here today to ask you, are you doing yours?
Everybody spoke, right? I don't want to leave anybody out. All right. Everybody fired up? Fired up. Fired up. Fired up. Fired up. Fired up. That's right. All right, I think that is the end of our press conference. I did really quick just want to say it's a lot to planning these events. And you do want to speak? Come on up. Yeah, come on up. People checked off who was here, so I didn't know.
All right, hello. So much have been said, so it's really not much more for me to say, but I do want to just share my story as a survivor. For the first 16 years of my life, I can honestly say I felt out of touch with the violence in my community. I would hear about it on the news or just passing by, and it never really hit home to me as an issue that needed my attention. But when I turned 17, violence literally knocked at my front door. My brother Dean was gunned down right up the street from our house. It was then that it became so real to me. I don't think I completely wrapped my head around the idea that someone pulled a trigger, aimed at my brother's head, and immediately took his life at 22 years old. He was in school, he was working, and after his death, we found out that his girlfriend was expecting their first child. So violence disrupted my entire family. My brother was murdered on the 4th of July, and so I didn't know if I felt right to even celebrate that day. The incident happened in the middle of a crowd, but the murder remains unsolved 23 years later. So the trust in my community actually also was disrupted. And not only that, my nephew was born without a chance of meeting his father. After losing my brother, I became hypersensitive to the victims of gun violence, and specifically sensitive to the grieving families that all had to bury their loved ones to something so senseless. I founded an organization in my brother's honor called Identify Your Dream, where we offer grief support to children who lost their loved one to violence. Where I once was in a space of uncertainty or hopelessness, I now have found hope in the possibility of a resolve. There is transformative power in collective voices speaking out and speaking up and speaking for all of those who no longer are here with us. I stand proud alongside each and every one of you who have made the commitment to use your voice to affect change in the community. We stand boldly as we demand action, bringing an end to gun violence. Unfortunately, I had to lose someone dear to me. But today, I declare, along with everybody else, enough is enough. We so desperately need a change to stop the cycle of gun violence in our community. And I have a voice, and I will speak out boldly until that change manifests. Thank you.
All right, give it up for everyone that spoke today. We thank you all for your stories and your testimonies and your advocacy for us to get involved. Let me just really say it takes a lot to put these events together, and so I want to thank all of those who are here today who actually volunteered and came down and took your time to be here. Let's thank all of our volunteers. And also, she probably didn't want to be recognized, but I have to recognize Carolyn, who really led this effort to make sure it was here in Detroit. So give it up for Carolyn and Barry Blackwell from my office. Come on, both of y'all should come forward because you all really led the day-to-day, making sure we had tents, chairs, everything. We thank both of you all for your efforts today. Carolyn and Barry made sure this event happened. And if one of you all want to say anything, because I know both of you are passionate about this issue, closing words, no? No one? Okay. All right. Well, thank you all again for coming out. We have work to do. God bless you all. Let's continue to fellowship with one another. Let's spread love and action to those who are not standing with us against gun violence. Amen. God bless you all.